I was ready to disappear and never look back, until her call changed everything. The sound wasn't loud. It's just a soft ding from the speaker in the hallway. Her voice followed, faint, casual, a little out of breath. "He's in the shower. You've got 2 minutes." I was in the garage, covered in dust, trying to fix the water heater she swore was making weird noises. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but the intercom had been acting up for months. Sometimes catching audio from the upstairs hallway and piping it through the old speaker by the fuse box. I didn't move, didn't breathe. There was a short silence. Then laughter. Not hers, or it's a man's laugh I didn't recognize. "I can't believe this is real," he said, low and giddy. She giggled. "Don't get greedy. We had a deal." Yeah, but admit it. You miss me when you're with him." I dropped the wrench. It hit the concrete with a clatter that felt too loud for reality. Backed away from the speaker like it was some wild animal. I stared at it as if maybe, just maybe, I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. I stood there for 10 minutes. Couldn't tell you what I was thinking. My brain didn't offer words. It's just static, the kind you hear in your ears before you pass out. Upstairs, the shower was still running. The water heater hummed quietly like nothing had happened. I walked out of the garage, got in my car, and drove until the gaslight came on. I don't remember the drive. I only remember the overwhelming sensation that everything around me, every tree, every billboard, every stretch of empty road was screaming. You heard what you heard. That was 4 days ago. Haven't been back since. I'm writing this from a rental house by a dried-up lake in Kentucky. There's a mattress on the floor, a kettle, and a cracked bathroom mirror. It smells like paint thinner and stale wood, but it's quiet. I needed quiet. I left my phone off until this morning when I turned it on. It buzzed for 5 minutes straight, messages, missed calls, notifications, all from her. I didn't open any of them. I didn't need to, because I already knew she was going to lie. She was going to twist it. She was going to cry, not because she was sorry, but because she got caught. And then she called. I stared at the screen. My finger hovered over decline. But I didn't press it because part of me, the broken, bleeding part, still wanted to hear what lie she'd choose. I answered. The second I said hello, I hated myself for it. It's not because I still loved her. At least I don't think I do. But because my voice sounded weak, small, like a child opening the door to the monster he already knows is standing there. There was a pause on the line, not hesitation, no calculation. She knew she had one chance to reel me back in, and she was loading the script. "Cal," she said, her voice cracking in a way that felt performed, like she'd practiced crying in the mirror. No, you're angry. I know what you think you heard, but please just let me explain." I didn't say anything, not right away. I wanted her to feel the silence. It's something she always did when she was lying. When she couldn't stand the weight of her own words, she exhaled hard, like she'd been holding her breath for 4 days. It wasn't what it sounded like. He showed up without warning. It's just someone from my past. I wasn't expecting him. I panicked. "Didn't sound like panic," I said finally. My voice surprised me. It wasn't angry. It was tired, hollow, like I was watching her through soundproof glass. "He sounded comfortable." "'Cause I had to be," she shot back, the tone sharpening. "You think I wanted this? You think I planned for you to hear that?" I didn't even know the intercom was still working. I had. Oh, I laughed. I actually laughed. "If you had what? You would have been quieter? Lied more carefully?" There was a long pause. I could almost hear her blinking, rebuilding her strategy. "I messed up," she finally said. "But it didn't mean anything. I never touched him. It was just words. It was stupid nostalgia. I didn't think it through." That's when I felt it, that weird slow-motion sensation, like the floor was rising up to meet me. I remembered every night she came home and hugged me like a friend. Every weekend she needed space. Every look she gave her phone like it was a lifeline and I was background noise. It wasn't just words. I whispered more to myself than her. "You gave him access to our house, our hallway, our marriage. Don't do this," she said. Her voice hardened again, that switch she flips when empathy isn't working. "You're spiraling. This doesn't have to be the end of everything. Just come home. Let's talk face to face. You owe me that." I froze. You owe me that. The sentence repeated itself in my head over and over like a broken record. I stared out. The dirty window of the cabin. The lake below was bone dry, cracked like old skin. The trees didn't sway. They stood still, suffocating in the heat. Everything felt wrong, off, unnatural. I leaned against the wall and said nothing. Just let the silence stretch long enough to see if she'd reveal something by accident. But all I got was a soft, frustrated sigh. "Where are you?" she finally asked. Quieter now. I didn't answer. "I'm not trying to trap you, Cal. I just need you to understand. You left. You vanished. And now everything's on fire. I need you to come back before it's too late." "Too late for what?" I asked, and something in my chest cracked as I said it. "For you to lie more effectively? For you to clean up the mess before I figure out how deep it really goes?" She didn't reply, not for several seconds. Then, almost inaudibly, she whispered, "Because he's not gone." I stopped breathing. "What?" "He's been calling me," she continued, showing up at my office. "I think he followed me home yesterday. He knows I'm alone now. He thinks you left because of him. And Cal, he's not who I thought he was." My throat tightened. "You invited him in. You brought him into our life." I didn't know what he'd turn into, she said, almost pleading now. "He wasn't like this before, but now he's different. He's angry, obsessed." I'm scared. Part of me wanted to tell her to deal with it herself, that she'd earned the chaos. But another part, the same stupid, fragile part that had packed her photo in my hoodie, was already imagining her sitting on the edge of our bed, staring out. The window at a parked car she couldn't prove was following her. "Why are you really calling?" I asked. "I think he's going to do something," she said, "and I don't know who else to call." The line went quiet, and just like that, everything I thought I'd left behind started pulling me back in. Her last words echoed in my mind long after the call. Ended. "I think he's going to do something." I replayed them over and over like a warning scratched into the walls of a sinking ship. She wasn't crying, not really, but there was fear in her voice. Not guilt, not regret, just raw fear. And that's what twisted my gut the most, because I couldn't tell if she was scared of him or of what he might reveal to me. I sat alone for hours after the call, staring at the cracked ceiling of that miserable rental. It's the kind of place where every sound feels louder and every silence feels haunted. I hadn't slept much since I left, but that night I didn't even try. I paced between the front door and the kitchen, replaying her voice, her phrasing, her choice of words. Not once did she say his name. Not once did she explain how it started. She just dropped his shadow into the middle of my unraveling life and asked me to come back before something worse happened. But worse than what? Worse than betrayal. Worse than standing in your garage and hearing your wife giggle like a schoolgirl. Over an open mic, giving some faceless guy permission to sneak into the ruins of your trust. I didn't think worse existed until around midnight, when someone knocked on the door 3 quick taps. I froze. There were no neighbors. No one nearby for miles. I hadn't told anyone where I was, not even my brother, who I knew would have come. With beer and too many questions. The rental didn't even have a number posted on the mailbox. My car was parked behind the shed. The only reason someone would find me out here is if they were looking. I stood perfectly still, not even daring to exhale through my nose. The knock didn't come again, no footsteps. No creak of retreating wood, just wind outside and the dull hum of the fridge struggling to stay alive. Eventually, I gathered the courage to approach the door and peek through the slit in the curtain. Nothing, just the porch and something small. A folded piece of paper under the welcome mat that hadn't welcomed anyone in years. I waited another 10 minutes, then opened the door slowly and reached for it the way someone might reach for a live wire. The note was damp from the humiditinal envelope. No name, just 3 words in jagged handwriting. "She's lying again." I shut the door and locked it. Then I locked it again and again. I backed away, holding the note like it might catch fire. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was unmistakably personal. I didn't know who wrote it, didn't know how. They knew where I was, but someone was watching. Someone who knew what Rena was capable of. And suddenly, her fear made a little more sense. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the only chair by the front window, holding the note and staring out at the gravel path that led to the road. No one came back. No lights, no cars, just the dark in me and the growing realization that whatever I thought this was, simple affair, a woman who lost interest, was something far more tangled. In the morning, my phone buzzed again. It was her. This time she didn't call. She sent a voice message. I stared at the screen, my thumb trembling. Then I played it. Cal, I don't know if you're still listening, but he came by again last night. He didn't knock, just stood across the street watching the house. I saw him through the blinds. I think he knows something about you. Said your name. He said you left more behind than just a note. Please, I don't feel safe. I don't even know who he really is anymore. And just like that, she flipped the story again, from accused to victim, from guilty to cornered and worse. She dragged me into it. He said your name. I wanted to believe this was just manipulation, some grand guilt trip. But the note, the knock, the voice outside her house, none of that fit neatly into lies. It meant someone else was playing this game, someone I didn't know, someone who thought I mattered. And the deeper I fell into the silence of that cabin, the louder one thought screamed through my bones. What if this wasn't about her cheating at all? What if it was always about me? I spent most of that day driving aimlessly, not because I had anywhere to be, but because the thought of staying still made my skin crawl. Every bump in the road felt like a question I couldn't answer. Every rearview glance felt like someone might be watching, and maybe they were. The note still sat on the passenger seat. Its message burned into my thoughts. She's lying again. 14 letters, and yet they carried the weight of a freight train. I couldn't ignore them, and I couldn't ignore her voice either. The desperation, the paranoia, the quiet plea for help hidden beneath all her past deceptions. At worst of all was that one sentence I couldn't shake. He said your name. What the hell did that mean? I pulled over outside a gas station on the edge of town, grabbed a coffee I didn't drink, and sat in the car scrolling through names in my contacts I hadn't thought about in years. I finally landed on one, Maggie. Maggie was Rena's friend from her first job out of college. They had a falling out, something vague about boundaries that Rena never explained. But Maggie and I had talked a lot. Back in the day, she always struck me as someone who paid attention, someone who noticed things other people missed. I hadn't heard her name in over 5 years. I figured if anyone knew about this mysterious he, it would be someone from Rena's early chapters before me. I didn't call. I sent a message. Something safe, neutral. Hey Maggie, sorry this is out of nowhere, but I'm trying to make sense of some weird things happening with Rena. Do you remember anyone from her past who might have been obsessive? Someone who got too close? I didn't expect an answer, not fast. Anyway, but she replied in 5 minutes. You should come see me. This isn't something to text about. I froze. That wasn't curiosity. That was urgency. She sent me her address. Still lived in the same apartment? Told myself I'd just go for 20 minutes, just long enough to hear whatever vague warning she had to offer. Just long enough to confirm it was nothing, that Rena was simply a liar, not the center of some unraveling nightmare. But when Maggie opened the door and saw me, the first thing she did was hug me tight, too tight. Into my shoulder. I should have warned you. Should have said something a long time ago. We sat in her kitchen, surrounded by dying plants and shelves of books stacked 2 rows deep. She poured me tea without asking if I wanted any, and then, slowly, she started talking. There was a guy named Grady, she began. I don't know if that name means anything to you. I doubt she's ever mentioned him. They met at a yoga retreat years before she met you. It got intense fast, like obsessive fast. She told me he made her feel seen in a way no one else did. But it got dark, Cal, really dark. I didn't say anything, so I was gripping the mug too tightly to speak. He started following her, showing up at her job. She'd get anonymous gifts, flowers with no note. One time she found her favorite lipstick smeared across her front door. She told me he'd stopped, that he'd finally vanished. But voice dropped. I never believed he was gone. I blinked. And you think this is him? She hesitated. Has she said his name? No. Then yeah, I think it is. He liked playing from the shadows, getting close to people she trusted. And once she cut him off, he didn't go after her. He went after her world, her relationships. That's why I stopped talking to her. I started getting messages, calls from blocked numbers. My apartment got broken into, nothing stolen, just rearranged like he was showing me how close he could get. My heart was hammering in my chest now. Why didn't you ever tell me? I didn't think he'd still be around. Honestly, she'd always had a way of making you feel like if something went wrong around her, it was your fault. I figured you were smart enough to get out when things got weird. I nearly laughed. Yeah, real sharp of me. Maggie looked at me with something like pity. I'm saying this because you deserve to know what you're really dealing with. If he's back, it's not just about her anymore. He likes games. He wants you to think it's all about infidelity, but it's not. That's just the bait. I swallowed hard, the memory of that whisper through the intercom, her laugh, his voice, the note under my door. The knock in the night, all of it bait. Then Maggie stood and pulled something from a drawer, a small torn notebook. She flipped through the pages and handed me one photo. It was Rena, younger, hair darker, and next to her a man with sunken eyes and a grin that didn't reach them. He looked like the kind of guy who thought secrets were currency. That's him, she said. And then she added, he likes to ruin people slowly. So whatever you left behind, Cal, you better go back and finish it before he does. The drive back wasn't like the one where I left. That first time I was running, fueled by confusion, betrayal, and the sick ache of watching everything I built wither in silence. But this time, I wasn't running. I was returning, dragging behind me a truth I never wanted to face, knowing that whatever waited for me on the other side of our front door wasn't just about a cheating wife or a broken marriage. It was something worse, something older, something calculated. I kept Maggie's warning tucked in the back of my mind as I watched. The trees blur past the window, her voice repeating like a scratched record. He likes to ruin people slowly. And as much as I hated admitting it, Rena's call sounded less like manipulation and more like a cry for help. I didn't know if it was sincere or if she was caught in a game she couldn't win, but either way, the pieces didn't add up. The note, the knock, the intercom, they weren't random. They were placed, timed, engineered, which meant someone was watching both of us. I arrived just before sunset. The neighborhood looked the same, overly neat lawns, that same flickering street lamp that had never worked right. But our house, it felt like it had changed. It sat too still. The curtains were drawn tighter than I remembered. No lights. No sound. No sign of her car in the driveway. I parked a block away and approached on foot, careful, listening. The porch groaned under my step. I stood there for several minutes, heart pounding, eyes scanning the windows, trying to decide if this was brave or stupid. Then I pulled out my key. It still worked, clicked open, just like it always did. That was somehow more disturbing than if it had been changed, like the trap was still wide open. Inside, the air was wrong. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, like the house had been holding its breath since I left. I stepped inside, every creak beneath my feet echoing louder than it should. The living room was untouched, too clean. The pillows were lined up perfectly, the remote stacked neatly next to a half-burned candle. It was Rena's idea of order, an environment so pristine it masked the storm always raging beneath. "Rena," I called out softly, not sure I wanted her to answer. No response. I checked the kitchen, empty. A single wine glass in the sink, no dishes, no signs of recent use. Wait, then the dining room, nothing? Then I saw it on the hallway table, just below the mirror, her phone, unlocked, open, sitting face up like bait. The screen was on the messaging app, one thread, one number, no name. Just a long series of gray bubbles from the other side and one message she had typed, but never sent. "Please don't come back. He knows everything. He's not safe anymore." My blood turned to ice. She wasn't talking about me. The context was too clear. The message was never sent, which meant whoever she was talking to, Grady, I assumed, still thought she was playing along, but she wasn't. She was trying to push back. Finally, maybe too late. I moved down the hallway slowly, every step heavier than the last. I didn't know what I'd find. If she'd be asleep, passed out, gone. I didn't even let myself imagine worse. When I reached the bedroom and pushed the door open, the air changed again. The bed was untouched, her side still perfectly made. Closet doors slightly ajar, a half-packed suitcase sat on the floor. And then a sound, not loud, but definite, the smallest click from the bathroom door. Someone was inside. I backed away instinctively, heart racing, hands trembling. I looked around for anything I could use, a lamp, a chair, anything. My fingers curled around the edge of a picture frame. I raised it slowly, my body frozen in place as the bathroom door creaked open and Rena stepped out. Her eyes met mine wide, startled, haunted. She looked thinner, like she hadn't eaten in days. Pale makeup smudged under her eyes, but it was her. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, suspended in silence. Then she whispered, "You weren't supposed to come back tonight." I lowered the frame slowly. "Where is he?" Her lips parted. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked past me to the window, peeled back the curtain, and stared out like she was expecting someone to be standing there. "I haven't seen him since yesterday," she murmured, "but he's been here inside. I woke up 3 nights ago and found the front door wide open. Nothing missing, just open like he wanted me to know." I stepped closer. "Why didn't you go to the police?" She gave me a tired laugh. "I did twice, the second time. An officer told me off the record that Grady's name came up in another case 6 months ago, but it went nowhere. No charges, no one could prove anything, and then that officer stopped returning my calls." My jaw clenched. "So you thought calling me would help?" Her voice cracked. I looked around the room again. Everything felt too fragile. I realized then that we weren't alone in this house. Maybe not physically, but his presence lingered in the walls, in the stillness, in the way her eyes darted to shadows before finishing a sentence. And in that moment, as she sat down on the edge of the bed and held her head in her hands, I realized something far more terrifying than betrayal. Rena was no longer afraid of being caught. She was afraid of being erased. I sat across from her. In the dim light of our bedroom, the same bedroom where we once shared Sunday mornings, tangled in sheets, half laughing over nothing at all. Now it felt like a tomb, her face pale and twitchy, my heart pounding with every tick of the silent wall clock. We weren't husband and wife anymore. Not in this moment. We were 2 strangers occupying a battlefield littered with truths too heavy to speak. She wouldn't look me in the eye, and I couldn't tell if it was because she was ashamed or because she still wasn't done hiding something. "Why did you stay here?" finally asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. "If you knew he was in the house, if you knew he was watching, why didn't you go?" Rena's eyes flicked up to meet mine, glassy and guarded. So I didn't know where he wasn't. That stopped me cold. She wasn't afraid of being found. She was afraid there was nowhere left to hide. "I've changed my passwords, shut down all my social accounts. I even turned off the utilities for a few days, hoping it would throw him off," she continued, almost robotic. "But he's always 1 step ahead. It's like he knows me, like he's already lived every move I'm going to make." I hated how much sense. It made every part of me wanted to believe she was being dramatic, hysterical, trying to pull me back with some delusional paranoia. But she wasn't performing. I knew Rena's tells. This wasn't guilt. This was terror. Then she reached under the bed and pulled out a shoebox. She didn't hand it to me. She just set it between us like a bomb she was tired of carrying. "He's been sending these," she whispered, "every 3 or 4 days. No name, no return, address always left on the doorstep. No one ever sees him." I opened the box. Inside were a series of photos, real printed ones, like from a disposable camera. Most were taken through windows, few through car windshields. All of them were of me walking the dog, me leaving the grocery store, me asleep on the couch, one of me in the garage, working on the water heater the day I heard them on the intercom. I felt my throat tighten until it ached. "He's been watching me," I said slowly. Rena nodded. "I told you. It's not just about me anymore. It never was." I rifled through the photos, each one stabbing deeper than the last. At the very bottom was a folded piece of paper. On it was a crude drawing a house with two stick figures, one labeled me, one labeled you. The stick figure labeled you was scratched out entirely. Next to it, in childlike scrawl, were 3 words, "Not yours anymore." The room spun. "It's trying to erase me," I muttered, almost to myself. "Not just from your life, from everything." Rena wrapped her arms around herself. "He used to say that back when I tried to end things," he said. "I don't leave scars. I replace." The canvas, I stood and paced. Every instinct in me screaming to run to get as far from this house, this woman, this nightmare as possible. But something heavier rooted me in place. I turned toward her, desperate to understand. "Why didn't you ever tell me about him before you let me marry you? Move in with you, sleep beside you for years, and you never once mentioned this psycho." Expression twisted anger, grief, shame, maul, boiling under the surface. Because for the longest time I thought I deserved him. I blinked. What? I let him on. Back then, I was younger. I was reckless. I liked the attention. I liked the way he looked at me, like I was the only thing that mattered, until I tried to set boundaries. And then he changed. And by the time I realized how bad it had gotten, it was too late.
Oh!
Every time I tried to talk about it, people made me feel like I had asked for it. So I shut up and I buried it. Thought I had finally outrun him. The weight of her confession settled between us like a lead balloon. So all of this, the distance, the weird hours, the secrets, was that all him? She hesitated. "No," she said finally, and I could hear the knife in her honesty. Some of it was me. I did drift. I did lie. I was so used to keeping things hidden that eventually I just kept hiding. My chest tightened. I didn't know if I felt vindicated or more broken than ever. There was no neat version of this story, no clear villain or victim. It's just 2 people who had built a marriage on shaky ground and someone outside who wanted to burn it down completely. Then, from the hallway, a noise. Soft, deliberate, a single creak of the floorboards. Rena bolted upright. I reached for the bedside lamp, ready to use it as a weapon if I had to. We stared at the doorway. Another creak, closer. And then nothing, just the sound of our breathing and the lamp still trembling. In my hands, we stepped into the hallway slowly, inch by inch, like kids in a haunted house. No one there, but written in red across the hallway mirror. With something thick and greasy, maybe lipstick, maybe worse, were 2 words. "Still here."
Hey.
We stood there frozen, staring at the words smeared across the hallway mirror like they had been painted with pure dread. Still here. It wasn't messy, wasn't rushed. It was precise letters shaped with intent, written as if he'd had all the time in the world. And that was what chilled me most. He hadn't just broken into our home, he lingered. He'd watched, and he wanted us to know. Rena backed away first. Her mouth hung open, but no words came out. She looked like she was about to faint. For a second, I actually reached for her out of instinct. My hand stopped midway. We were still fractured, still barely standing in the same emotional room. But survival has a funny way of pushing history aside. I took her arm and guided her into the kitchen, where we locked every door and checked every window. The back door deadbolt was half turned, not open, but not fully locked. It was like he'd been inside and decided to leave us just enough doubt. To lose sleep over, we called the police, or I did, while Rena sat at the kitchen table, staring at the floor like it might crack open. I didn't give them the full story, just that someone had entered our house and left a message. I didn't mention the past or the box of photos or the man she used to know and fear. I just wanted flashing lights and uniforms. I needed presents, something Grady wouldn't be able to mock or slip past. The operator said someone would be out in under 20 minutes. While we waited, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I opened her laptop. I didn't ask. I didn't give her a chance to tell me no. I sat down and started searching through her recent files, browser history, private messages. If we were in danger, if I was in danger, I had a right to know everything. And Rena didn't. Stop me, she just sat there, too exhausted to fight at first. Everything looked normal. Work files, emails, travel reservations. But then I opened a folder buried 4 layers deep. It was named Old Contracts. But inside were dozens of audio files, voice memos mostly, some dated from years ago. One caught my eye. It was named with a date that matched the day before I left. I clicked it. Her voice recorded quietly, like she was holding the phone under a pillow. "He's not who he used to be. I tried to warn you. I tried to end it clean, but you didn't listen. You never listen. And now he's watching him, Cal. My husband. I should have told him the truth sooner. Something happens to me, he's the reason. Something happens to Cal, it's because of me." I paused the file. Rena looked up, her eyes damp, but not crying. I was going to delete it. I thought about it a dozen times. I needed to say it out loud, even if no one ever heard it. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the room around me was starting to blur. The shadows felt like they were getting closer, the walls breathing. Then the doorbell rang loud and sharp, cutting through the fog like a slap. 2 officers, a man and a woman, calm, professional. They did a walkthrough of the house, took a report, photographed the mirror. The older one asked if we had cameras. We didn't. Grady had apparently been smart enough to avoid leaving prints. After about 40 minutes, they said they'd increased patrols in the area and left us with a flimsy sense of protection. When the door closed behind them, I turned to Rena. "This won't stop," I said. "You know that, right?" She nodded slowly. "I think he's building towards something."
What do you
mean? I mean, this game, the pictures, the messages, it's all prelude. He doesn't want to scare us. He wants to break us. When we're at our lowest, he'll come in and finish whatever he thinks he started. I sat down across from her. My legs were shaking. "We have to go tonight." She didn't argue. She just stood and started packing. We didn't have a plan, just fear in a car with half a tank of gas. She grabbed the essentials. I grabbed the shoebox of evidence. Just before we walked out the door, she paused. "What?" I asked. She pointed at the hallway mirror. "It's gone." I looked. She was right. The message, the smeared words gone as if they'd never been there. We hadn't touched it. The cops hadn't cleaned it. But now it was. Spotless. Gleaming. That was the moment I realized we weren't dealing with obsession anymore. We were dealing with control. Grady was already 1 step ahead of whatever came next. We drove without a destination, only direction. Away from the house. The mirror, the box of photos, the whispers in the dark. I kept checking the rearview mirror as if he'd be there, tailing us in some rusted-out car with the headlights off. But there was nothing, just the road behind us, and the wind screaming louder than either of us could speak. Rena sat beside me, her hand clenched around her phone like it was the last anchor keeping her from disappearing altogether. Neither of us had spoken in almost 40 minutes, and when I finally broke the silence, it wasn't out of courage, it was out of exhaustion. "Can't keep running," I said. "I know," she whispered, "but if we stop too soon, he'll finish what he started." I didn't respond. I just tightened my grip on the wheel. She was right, but we couldn't run forever. There had to be a way to end this, to cut him off, to finally take the upper hand. We ended up at an old roadside motel somewhere in Tennessee, the kind of place where the lights flicker and the vending machine hums like it's harboring a ghost. I booked the room under a fake name. Rena crashed on the bed, fully clothed, eyes open but unfocused, like she was stuck somewhere between memory and terror. I sat on the floor with the shoebox, spreading everything out like puzzle pieces. The photos, the note, the audio file transcripts I had scrolled out on the drive. I wasn't looking for meaning anymore. I was looking for a pattern, a mistake, human fingerprint in the middle of the monster, and then I found it in the metadata of one of the photos. A GPS tag. He made a mistake. Just one. One file improperly. Stripped, still attached to the original coordinates where it had been taken, a remote storage facility outside Nashville. He'd uploaded this image to print. He probably thought he wiped it clean, but he missed something. My heart began to race in a different way. I woke Rena up. I found him. She sat up slowly. "What?" "I found where he was, or still is." She stared at me. "So what do we do? Call the cops again?" "No," I said. "Not yet. This time we set the trap." We drove there the next morning. I knew it was reckless, stupid even, but I was done being the mouse. We parked 2 blocks away, waited in the car until we saw movement, a tall man in a hoodie and jeans ducking inside with a keycard. The sight of him sent ice through my bloodstream. Even from that distance, I knew it was him, his posture, his calm, like he owned the entire silence. I dialed the police, gave them the GPS coordinates, explained everything, not just the break-in, but the stalking, the evidence, the pattern. I sent the photos, the files. I even offered to go on the record and testify. The dispatcher didn't question it. I think they heard something in my voice that people only have when they've had enough. Within 20 minutes, unmarked units pulled up, stayed out of sight, watched as they entered quietly. Then not so quietly shouts, movement. 2 officers emerged, dragging Grady by the arms. He wasn't yelling, wasn't resisting. He just smiled like he was proud of something. The police searched the unit, found a wall covered in photos, notes, timelines of Manat Rina, me, pages of my routines, my past, even fake emails written from addresses I'd never used. He hadn't just been trying to ruin my marriage. He was trying to replace me, to erase me from my own story. The arrest was clean, charges were filed. The case was real finally, and the best part, he was denied bail. 2 weeks later, we moved out of that house, sold it to a young couple who wanted suburban quiet. I didn't warn them not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I knew now that the quiet wasn't cursed. The silence wasn't evil. Grady was, and he was gone. Rena and I didn't magically fall back in love, but we talked for hours every night, no pretending. I yelled. She cried. I told her everything she did to me, and she didn't flinch. She owned it. I saw something in her I hadn't seen in years, honesty without manipulation. It's been 3 months. I'm still in therapy, still healing. But last night, for the first time in what feels like forever, I caught her looking at me the way she used to not, with guilt.